Hello, everyone, and welcome to our session. Today, we are going to dive into the fascinating history of how we rest. We're starting with something I'm sure you've all heard, the 8-hour myth. Most of us are taught that a single 8-hour block of sleep is the only healthy way to live, but history and biology tell a much more interesting story. Take a look at this image. In our modern world, we become obsessed with the idea of perfect sleep, usually defined as falling asleep at 11 p.m. and not opening our eyes until 7 a.m. But did you know that for most of human history, this wasn't the norm at all? We currently live under intense social pressure to maintain a solid 8 hours of consolidated sleep. When we wake up in the middle of the night, we often feel anxious or think we have insomnia. However, that middle of the night wakefulness might actually be our bodies trying to return to a more natural state. This leads us to our key concept. Natural sleep cycles are often more flexible than we're led to believe. Before the Industrial Revolution and the invention of light bulbs, humans practiced what we call biphasic sleep. This means sleeping in two distinct shifts throughout the night. As we move through today's lesson, we'll see how our ancestors spent their nights and why our modern struggle with sleep might just be a mismatch with our biological history. Let's take a look at what these two shifts actually looked like. Building on what we just covered regarding the 8-hour myth, let's look at the actual rhythm our ancestors followed for centuries. It's a pattern known as biphasic sleep, consisting of two distinct shifts. The first sleep typically began shortly after dusk. In a world without electricity, the setting sun was the primary cue for the body to rest, leading to a deep sleep that lasted until about midnight. After a period of being awake, which we'll look at on the next slide, people would settle back down for the second sleep. This phase lasted from roughly midnight until the break of dawn. This wasn't some strange anomaly, it was the global norm. We see it referenced in historical literature like Chaucer's Canterbury Tales, and even in common medical advice from the time. However, as we reached the 17th century, this pattern began to vanish. The rise of artificial lighting started to stretch the day, to eventually pushing these two sleeps together into the single block we struggle to maintain today. Before the Industrial Revolution and electric lighting, humans followed a biphasic sleep pattern. Let's trace this natural cycle. The process began at sunset. Without artificial light, the body's circadian rhythm triggered melatonin production as soon as dusk fell. Unlike modern sleep patterns, people would naturally wake around midnight for a period known as the watch. During this 1 to 2 hour gap, people were remarkably productive, engaging in prayer, reading, or social reflection. Following the watch, second sleep began. This phase was often richer in REM sleep, leading to more vivid dreaming. At sunrise, the biological clock reset. This ancient rhythm provided a unique window for spiritual and social life in the middle of the night. Building on that understanding of broken sleep as a historical standard, we have to ask, what caused its disappearance? We are now looking at a pivotal turning point in human history, often referred to as the death of two sleeps. The first major blow was the introduction of gaslighting. For the first time, we could reliably extend the active day into the night. This technology effectively stole hours from the darkness, delaying our natural bedtime. Then came the Industrial Revolution. As labor moved from farms to factories, synchronization became essential. To keep machines running efficiently, workers were required to follow strict, set schedules that simply didn't allow for a 2-hour midnight break. This had a profound biological impact. Artificial light suppresses melatonin, the hormone responsible for our drive to sleep. By flooding our evenings with light, we fundamentally altered our internal chemistry, making it harder to maintain those two distinct sleep phases. If we look at this bar chart comparing the 1700s to the 1900s, the data is stark. In just 2 centuries, the practice of segmented sleep almost entirely collapsed, replaced by the consolidated 8-hour block we struggle to maintain today. In summary, technology and industrial demands forced a shift from segmented to monophasic sleep. Next, we'll use a simulation to see exactly how that light exposure interferes with your brain's chemistry. Welcome. This simulation helps us understand how light intensity and spectrum affect our circadian rhythm and melatonin production. Light intensity, measured in lux, is a primary signal for your brain's internal clock. In a pre-industrial setting, candlelight provides very low intensity and minimal blue light, allowing melatonin levels to rise naturally. The blue light spectrum is particularly effective at suppressing melatonin. Modern LED screens emit high levels of this light. Look at the shift in sleep onset when we simulate smartphone use late at night. The high blue light content tricks the brain into thinking it's still daytime. By adjusting these variables, you can see how our modern environment causes a compression of the sleep cycle and disrupts natural circadian rhythms. Having just explored how light and melatonin affect our circadian rhythms, let's apply that knowledge to the dreaded 3 a.m. wake-up call. In our current society, we often label this maintenance insomnia and treat it as a medical problem. The anxiety of being awake in a monophasic world is real. When you're the only one up, it feels like your body is failing a basic task. But that's where the history we've been tracing provides such a powerful shift in perspective. If we reframe this as insomnia's heritage, the pressure changes. As we discussed earlier, the 8-hour myth is a recent invention. For most of human history, that middle-of-the-night wakefulness was a peaceful, expected gap between the first and second sleep. This is the core point I want you to remember. Continuous sleep is a modern habit, not a biological constant. Our ancestors didn't panic at 3 a.m. because they understood it as a natural rhythm. By recognizing this biological history, we can significantly reduce the anxiety that actually keeps us awake. So, instead of fighting the wakefulness, we can learn to work with it. Now, let's look at the specific challenges our modern world adds to this natural cycle. As we bring our exploration of the pre-industrial night to a close, let's think about how we can reclaim our natural rest. We've seen that the transition from biphasic to monophasic sleep wasn't just a biological change, but a cultural one that redefined our expectations of what a good night's sleep looks like. One practical takeaway is the importance of light hygiene. By consciously controlling darkness in our modern environments, we can signal to our biology that it's time to wind down, effectively mimicking the natural transitions our ancestors lived by. The most powerful shift, however, is mental. Remember, waking at 3 a.m. isn't a defect or a sign of insomnia, it's an evolutionary echo. If you find yourself awake in the middle of the night, don't fight it. Instead, treat that quiet, peaceful watch between sleeps with the same respect our ancestors did. Ultimately, the goal is to work with your biology rather than against modern expectations. Thank you for joining me today. I hope this new perspective helps you find a more restful and forgiving relationship with your sleep. Before we wrap up, I'd like to hear your thoughts on how this might change your own nightly routine.